We can now proceed to rigging, and this is basically very large topic and it's a bit out of the scope here, and I'll try my best to explain everything I can with the limited time frame. For me, it's always about the purpose and the context, and right now the purpose of the rigging and the armature is just to pose this character for some kind of static illustration for a website or some design. But nevertheless, this can be a great starting point to get to know these tools a little bit better, get the grips of it, and then later find some resources to expand on that knowledge. So the first thing, when you want to move something, when you want to rig something, you need the armature, you need to add some bones to your mesh. And for that, there's an object called armature. So if you press Shift A, you will see that there are armature options. You might not see some of these options here if you didn't activate the Rigify add-on. I will get to this a little bit later. Basically, you have an option to create a single bone. Let me move this to the side. You don't need to repeat this. I'm just showing you some of these options. And then you can just extrude this like you would in the mesh. The difference between the armature and the mesh is that this is a procedural object, and these bones can be manipulated non-destructively. So if you go here, the armature has an option for the pose mode. And if you go to the pose mode, you can select some of these things and rotate and move them and scale them according to their parent bones. And if you then tab out, you will see that this maintains its position. But if you go into the edit mode, there's no original position that it was created in, and you can switch between the pose and the rest position here. So this is the basic concept behind those armatures, that you can create an object that can be manipulated non-destructively, and then you would map your mesh around this object so it can move with it. So let me just delete this. And basically you can create a human skeleton from bones like this, add a mesh to it, and then move these bones separately to create some kind of pose. It's totally doable, but there are some techniques that make the process of posing the armature a little bit easier, like the inverse kinematics and stuff like that, when you use some bones as only a control bones that somehow affect how these other bones and joints are behaving and stuff like that. So you can basically layer this stuff and create much more complex structure that in the end helps you create animations easier, but it's very time consuming to prepare. And that's why I almost always use the Rigify add-on if I want to use armatures. And if you didn't already, please just go to the preferences, add-ons, we'll enter rig, and it will find the Rigify add-on here. You will see I have it checked already, so check this checkbox to activate it and just close the preferences. And now if you press Shift A, you can see there are some of these more options here, and you can see for these armature options you have something called meta rig in the parentheses right next to it. And this is the concept that the Rigify uses, and I'll try to explain it a little bit here. So please bear with me for a few more minutes. And again, you don't need to repeat this after me. So I will add the armature, and I will add the basic human just for the explanation purposes and move it to the side. So I will press G then X and move it to the side, and I will focus on that. So the Rigify can create armature like this for us. If you go to the edit mode, you can see you can select these bones separately, and if you go to the bone options, you will see their name, and you might notice that there is a suffix for some of these bones. It's either L or R, so that's for the left and right. So the blender knows that these are symmetrical, and the meta rig means that Rigify can use the standard armatures as a blueprint for creating a whole rig. So basically the meta rig is just an armature as any other, as if you would create it manually. There's no difference at all. The only difference there is that when you have the Rigify add-on active, you have some more options for the Rigify here. on the armature level, like generate rig and some advanced options, but for the bones as well. And if you go to the pose mode, I will hit Ctrl Tab to switch to the pose mode. You can see there is something called a rig type, and that basically tells Rigify add-on what these bones are for. There are some predefined rig types, like the limbs, the spine, or something like that, or legs. And if you mark your bone with this, you are basically defining the blueprint for the Rigify to create some kind of controls for that bone. So for example, for the leg, that could be inverse kinematic options. And I will show you what I mean right away. If we tab out and now just go to the armature tab and click generate rig, you will see our rig was generated right here on the cursor position. And I will move it to the side as well. So press G then X. So this is what happens when you generate a rig with Rigify. You have this armature as a blueprint, basically as a recipe to create something like this. And you can just select this and delete it. You don't need it no more. Only if you would like to make some changes. There is still option to click generate rig once again, and it will know that this has to be regenerated. It's not that destructive operation to generate a rig. You can still like go inside, make some changes, and then generate it once again. But they're not connected in any way, so you can just delete it right away. And you can see this looks a little bit different than the armature. If you go to the pose mode, you will see all bunch of colored gizmos, and they're here just for the organizing purposes, to make things look a little bit easier and a little bit more practical. And these are some of these additional levels that I was talking about, where you're not creating only the bone structure for your mesh, but at the same time some of these control bones and gizmos. And if you want to know where these come from, if you explore the scene in the outliner a little bit more, you will see that the collection called widgets was created. You will see that it's hidden. But if you expand this, you will see that there is a bunch of geometry there hidden. And what this means basically is that when you have a bone on the armature, and that could be your custom armature as well, you have the option to switch the visual appearance of the bone with some of the custom mesh. So this is nothing more. These are all bones, the same as we created before. These just have some of the custom meshes and colors, so it's a little bit more organized. So if you go to the pose mode, you will see that there is an added level of complexity, that these are not only the regular bones that you can rotate and they are just connected together, but actually if you try to move the foot, it moves some of these other bones as well and stuff like that. And this is basically some more advanced rigging. So I will just tab out and delete this right away. Okay, I know that this was maybe a handful for a start, but I really wanted you to see that the Rigify add-on is not some sorcery. It just does some steps that you would need to do manually, and that would be very time consuming, and it's not easy to make those things. So for example, if you just need to pose your illustration for different purposes, you don't need to learn all the rigging technicalities. It can be enough for you to just know how the Rigify works and how to use it. And that's what I want to show you in this chapter right here. So now you can start to follow along, and we'll press Shift A, go to the armature and create a human meta rig. And now go to the armature tab right here. If you don't have it active, click here and go to the viewport display, and you can check in front, and that will make sure that the bones are always displayed in front of your mesh, so they're easier to handle. And now there are a bunch of things that we don't need, so we can just delete some of the stuff from the armature, but still we have to be a little bit careful here. The Rigify isn't that user-friendly, so if you accidentally delete some of the bones that are necessary for generating that rig, it will break and it will generate some of the errors. So one of the most common, and that might happen to you as well, is when you're editing, this here is not connected to the neck, but they have to share the exact same location. The starting and ending point of these bones respectively needs to have the same location, otherwise the Rigify will break. So be careful about things like that. Basically try to just delete the things I delete here without moving anything too much. So first of all, I will just drag the selection around all of these face bones, press X and delete bones, and the ears as well here. We won't be needing those, and we can enable the bone properties here so we can see actually what bones we are dealing with. So we can see this is a part of the spine, so we will definitely need that. And now if we check it from the side, we created the 4-finger cartoon hand. This human metallic have obviously full number of fingers, so we'll have to delete one. So just select these bones by holding Shift, press X and delete. And on the other side as well, just like that, delete. Okay, now I will tab out and let's look from the front. I will need to scale this up a little bit, and of course we'll need to change this armature quite a lot because this is a cartoon character. You can see he has short legs and stuff like that, so there will be quite a lot to make here. But first I want to make sure that the level of the shoulders is same as the model here, so let's press just S and scale this up like this. But don't forget, we'll need to press Ctrl A and apply scale, because if you would generate rig from the scale armature that doesn't have scale applied, the rig would be generated in the original size before the scaling. So right now let's tab in, and to make things easier we will delete one side of the symmetry bones altogether. So let's just select all of the leg, press X and delete. We can now delete this pelvis bone as well, so press X and delete the bone. And the collarbone, the chest bone, and the whole right hand. So right now we only have a spine basically, and some of these bones that can be then mirrored on the other side. We can now start moving these bones around, and let's toggle X-ray so we better see our mesh. And let's disable the wireframe overlay. And when we enable the X-ray, I can see there's some suspicious bone right here when you click twice, and I can see it's called face, and we already deleted all of the face bones, so this is probably a root control bone for the face, and we don't need that. We won't be creating any rig for the face, so let's delete that one. And here the neck looks okay. We can just select this joint right there, press G then Z and move this up a little bit, and then select this node right here and press G then Z and drag it all the way up, so this will control our head. And right here we can select all of this, press G then Z and move it down, and we can additionally select the leg bone and drag it down. So it looks something like this. And basically you want to place it where the pelvis bone reaches somewhere here, and we can move it right away. So if we select this node right here, you can extend the pelvis bone all the way to the side here. And you actually need to do that because it will be used to paint weights over the mesh so that the legs and hand don't get too control over the area here. So that's all right. And now we can press G then Z and distribute some of these bones on the spine a little bit better here. Don't forget, as I said here, you need to select both of those and to move them at once, because it would give an error there. Now we can select the hand and move it a little bit here where the shoulders start. We'll get back to this later. And now move this here, so the collarbone as well as the pelvis bone has the control over this area here. And the chest bone, has the same purpose, so we can just move it here where the breasts are and look from the side and scale it up a little bit. We'll refine this later from the side view. Right now we can take care of the legs and hands, so select the leg bones, press G then X and move them to the center of the leg. We can move this down a little bit. Basically the leg starts somewhere here. So this will be very short and the movement will be somewhat limited there. You just have to keep this in mind. Okay, and right here we want to move this here where the hand starts, this to the area of the elbow, and basically we are almost good to go. And now scale this part here so it's larger and move it in place, and let's rotate it like this. Okay, and now we can look from the side, and I think we can move the whole armature a little bit to the back. So press G then Y and move it to the middle of the body like this. Now we can see what adjustment needs to be made, so let's make this one larger so it affects the larger area there. And same here, we need to move this a little bit to the back, this area to the front. Okay, so something like this. And this is a very important bone for some of the leg controls. So move it all the way back here, press G then Y, move it here, and we will scale it up so it's wide as the leg itself. So something like this. Okay, and we can move this so it's not so steep. Okay. Now I can see that this is a little bit too in the back, so I'll press G and Y, and let's look from the top. Move this on the Y-axis, and we'll start placing the fingers, and that's probably the most tedious part of this whole process. So first of all, let's adjust the palm a little bit like that. Now select the thumb. Let's move it more in place here. And distribute these bones so it more makes sense. You will have to rotate this a little bit so you can see if it goes out of the mesh. Basically you want to place this in the middle of the finger like that. Okay, it looks good for the thumb, and let's just repeat this for all of the other fingers. And in a similar way that you would do in a mesh, you can use the shortcuts like clicking the bone and control clicking here to select the whole part. Let's rotate this a little bit, move it up so it sits a little bit better with that index finger. And be careful around the parts here. You can see once more there are two nodes here, and we don't want them to separate because I think that would throw the error with the Rigify add-on. So do it like this. Then from the top side we can move this to the side a little bit. And once again, don't forget that one as well. Okay, looking good so far, and let's repeat the process. Okay, looks fine in my opinion. So that was the hand, and right now we can take care of some of the details. You can inspect your model all around, place some of these joints in a way that you find a little bit more accurate. And you know, it's hard to talk about accuracy when we are dealing with the cartoon character. So really, just go with the hunch and try to make something. You can always change it later. So as you can see, we only did the left part, and as I said before, we need to symmetrize this. And if you try to select these bones, you can see their name is always followed with the suffix .l, and that way it's very easy to symmetrize this. You can just select all with A. Don't worry when you're selecting these bones in the middle. Click armature and symmetrize, and that will create the mirror duplicates of all of these bones that had the L suffix and give them suffix R, and it will leave those in the middle without the suffixes alone. So this is now complete armature. We can now tab out, and I just want to point out that you could easily, let me toggle the X-ray, we could easily parent the mesh to this armature and it would work. We would be able to move this around, but we wouldn't have those controls that I've shown you that the Rigify can create for you. So let's just now go here to the armature settings, and under the Rigify buttons here, click generate rig, and you will see that the rig got generated right away. And for some reason, it probably remembered the position when I moved it there. So let's just click the rig and press Alt G to reset the position. You probably won't see this problem, so if you haven't played around with armatures like I did before, the rig should be generated in place right here. And luckily there were no errors. The rig got generated successfully. The size of the rig is quite alright. You can see that all the controls match their respective parts of the body. So right now we can just select this original armature, this metal rig, and press M and move this to backup so it doesn't get in the way. And now we are basically ready to add all of the meshes to this rig. But first I want to make sure once again that the mesh is without any errors. So let's just select all, and we need to deselect the rig, so control drag here to deselect it. You can see in the outliner, and you can see in the outliner we have only the mesh object selected. And now tab into the edit mode, and let's select all. And first of all, I want to press Shift N to recalculate normals in case there would be problem with them, and then press M and merge by distance. And we can see the Blender removed 0 vertices, so we had no double geometry, and our normals should be calculated correctly now that we press Shift N. So I'm confident that this mesh will work fine with the rig. So let's tab out and now select only the body and shift click the rig that was generated for us. And the way you add a mesh to the rig is by parenting. So we will press Ctrl P for parenting. And you can see there's an option to armature deform. You can see there are a bunch of options, and they all have to do something together with groups and weights. So let me explain. For a while, if you select the body and go to the object data properties here, you can see there's a section for vertex groups. You should already know what this is good for. For example, if you selectively need to apply some modifier to only some of the vertices and stuff like that. And this is the technique that the armature used to control the position of the geometry. So if you have some bone, it has some respective vertex group that it controls. And as you know, when you create a vertex group, you can adjust the weight of how the vertex is connected to that group. So it's not just the 0, 1, but actually you can have a 0.5 weight. So when you move that vertex group, the vertex follows only halfway because its weight is set to 0.5. So this is the technique that the armature uses, and additionally it will add a modifier for the armature deformations. So that's what that parenting will do for us. So again, we can shift click the armature, press Ctrl P, and choose the armature deform with automatic weights. This is something we are interested in. We don't want to paint every vertex group ourselves or add everything manually. We want as much of this done automatically as we can. So let's select this. And now if we inspect the body again, you can see that there's a modifier which says armature. It has the object rig and it's bound to vertex groups. And now if we go to the object data properties, you can see there are a bunch of vertex groups created for us. And as I said before, if you select some of the vertex groups, and if you now go to the edit mode, you will see that the option for assigning weight to some of these vertex groups is available. But the easier way of applying weights is through weight painting, and that's available in the modes here. So you already know object edit mode, the texture paint mode, and now there's one more which is called weight paint. Now if you select that, you will see this blue mesh, and some of the parts are colored differently. It basically shows you how much of some of these vertices belong to their respective vertex groups. So if you click through this vertex group right now, you will see the different weight options there, and that's something that was created automatically for us. That's why we picked the automatic weight options, because we would need to do this manually if that wasn't there. So let me repeat this once more a little bit. The way I like to rig my character is to use some of these meta rigs and repurpose them for whatever model or body I need, then create a Rigify rig which makes the control of the armature very easy, and then I just parent the mesh object to the armature with automatic weights. So as much as possible is done for me automatically, and then the armature controls the mesh through these vertex groups that are painted non-linearly. So let me switch back to the object mode. Now select this rig, and we can take it for a spin a little bit. So Control Tab to switch to pose mode. And here you can see this serves as a control for the root of the whole mesh. So if you move this, you basically move the whole rig without moving the origin point. These parts here serve as the inverse kinematics control for the legs and hands. So this way you can control the position of the leg. And this is for the hand movements. And again, this is the inverse kinematic control. So when you start to move this up, you will see that the joint is moving too. And this allows for some stretches. So if you're working on a cartoon or something, this works nicely. So I immediately like how this mesh is deformed. And of course, there are some other bones like this where you can control the position of the pelvis, and you can see how the hands and legs stay at their place. So you can easily do funny stretches like this. Yeah, take it for a spin yourself. It's quite fun, but we are not finished yet, because right now we just parented the body and we need to add rest of the objects as well. So, and there are different ways how I will do this for the different kinds of objects. So for example, this part up here with the mask, head, the feathers and the branches, I want them parented to that spine, to that last spine bone for the head movement, and I want them to be part of the vertex group as a whole. I don't want any dynamic weight painting or anything there. I really don't want the mask to be deforming or branches or stuff like that. So right now I will press Ctrl Tab to exit the pose mode, and we can now select the feathers, mask, branches and the head dummy, and shift click the body and press Ctrl J to join them in there. Basically nothing changed right now, because these objects weren't part of the body mesh when we added the armature, so they're not part of any of these vertex groups. We have to do this manually right now, which is exactly what we want. So Let's just tab in right now, and I will hover over the body object, press L and press H to hide. And now we can press A to select all of the objects we just joined with the body mesh. And let's find the vertex group for the spine 006, and that's the largest bone at the top, which controls the position of the head. And we'll just click assign. Now press Alt H to unhide the body. We can tab out, and if we now switch here to the weight paint mode and click through the vertex group, you will see this all is blue, and if you select the spine object, this whole part is red, so that last bone has absolute control over the position of these vertices. There will be no deformations happening, nothing. So if I go to the object mode now and we select the armature and press Ctrl Tab for the pose mode, let me enable the X-ray. So this gizmo right here is for the head control, and if you now press R and rotate this, we can control the head like this. If you press R twice, you have absolute control over how the body moves, and it moves at once without any deformations, which is exactly what I wanted. So let's press Ctrl Tab, and now the last thing we need to do to add these accessories, and that might be a little bit tricky because they are outside the body. They're a little bit complicated in terms of the shape, and the automatic weight painting might not always produce the result you are going for. So just please keep in mind that we might need to modify this heavily after adding to the armature. Right now we don't need to add these objects to the body object. We can parent them separately, which is a useful thing sometimes. So right now just select all of these objects and select the armature as the last. So shift click here, press Ctrl P and parent them with automatic weights. So right here, if you see the armature object in the outliner, if you expand on that, you will see that the body is parented to the rig object, but at the same time these other objects as well, and we parented them with automatic weights. And right now I really don't know how these automatic weights were applied here, so please bear with me. If there are some errors, we will fix them. So let's just move the body a little bit to see how the talisman works. But so far so good. We can see here it goes into the body, but we can modify that later with some custom weight painting. Looks fine so far. I'm really surprised. This looks great. There's almost nothing we need to do. There will be some details we need to fix, like if you move the body and stretch it too far, the leg bone actually has quite effect on the belt here, which is not so great. But all in all, I think this looks okay. Yeah, we'll definitely need to deal with the belt. So yeah, right now just go and try to break the model to see where there are some issues and have some fun like this. And don't worry, you can't really break the armature. If you're in the pose mode, and whatever adjustments to the bones, to these controls you make, it can be all reset very easily. If you select all, go to the pose, clear transform and all, it will reset. So don't worry about that. And of course, don't forget to save.